Okay, I'm delighted to say we're joined now by former Dublin Gaelic footballer and Electric Ireland Sigerson Cup winner with DCU DE, Jonny Cooper, as he looks ahead to Wednesday's Electric Ireland Sigerson Cup final between UL and UCC. This year, through its hashtag First Class Rivals campaign, Electric Ireland celebrated the unexpected alliances formed between county rivals as they come together in pursuit of some of the most coveted titles across Camogie and GAA. Jonny, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, Ger. Yeah, really good. Not too bad. Nice bright morning, so really good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. As far as I know, the Sigerson's U one were all full of stuffed with high quality dubs. Were there any non-dubs on your teams that you were actually friends with at the end of that?
It's always good to start with a loaded question. So, yeah, there's there's plenty of dubs, all right. But I know there's loads. Aidan Walsh and Michael Murphy and Robbie Henry. Yeah, there was plenty of guys from outside the M50 as well, so really good days.
Michael Murphy's pretty good.
He's a decent player. I think it was the Monaghan influence, Niall Moyna being the manager, potentially.
Yeah.
We can give some credit to him.
True, and Mick Bohan and a few other good leaders there too.
Jesus, that's one of the great all-time backroom teams then, is it?
There was a couple of heavy hitters all right along the years. Yeah, well, Mick Bohan would have been the main coach in fairness, and obviously he's with the ladies last couple of years and with the men's prior to that, and Niall Moyna. As mentioned, I think he's moved on now. He's still in the university. We're not coaching. Paddy is obviously there now.
Was it enjoyable? Because you guys obviously had pressure of playing for inter-county, but there's this kind of just this little release valve where you're with your mates and you're having the crack with people who you know you're going to come up against potentially later on down the year. So how did you prepare for that from just a mental level?
Completely. I know we were joking there about playing with different guys, but the perspective, and I know again we're joking about Dubs not getting outside the M50, but even from a personal point of view, the massive amount of insight, social, I guess diversity of background. Obviously you're playing with quality guys, and that's great because on the pitch is important. But even from a personal development, stay in touch with plenty. A lot of them guys that I would have been playing Sigerson with over them years. So I think it's a little bit different now. Obviously out of the college scene a good number of years now, I think it's a little bit different. The inter-county scene absolutely has first priority, whereas I think at the time there was a little bit of I guess people probably went out of their way a little bit more to play Sigerson. I would think. I respect the competition massively, and hopefully it doesn't erode. Maybe because the space and time it's been given the last couple of years with the inter-county pressure, obviously coming a little bit heavier and stronger. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, but hopefully it remains. And I don't think it can be ring fenced, but somewhere in that space, I think will be useful to maybe pursue.
Yeah, for sure. The Michael Murphy, I was chatting to him recently, is heading up the sports department in Letterkenny, and he was just talking about the importance of third level education generally. And I think that sometimes we take it for granted. I was listening to the football pod, and Paddy Andrews, who I think was a teammate of yours, was again, and Tommy were just talking about it's really important that we do actually give this some space, whatever space it's required, because it's an opportunity for players, as you say, to mix from other backgrounds, but also just to mature at their own pace, because everybody matures at a different pace, and sometimes you're ready for inter-county and sometimes you're not.
No, fully agreed. I just listened to your rugby conversation a couple of minutes ago. I mean, one of the unfortunate downsides, certainly from my experience of GA, is obviously you get to see guys across the four white lines, but beyond that, from other counties that is, but beyond that, it doesn't probably venture too far. And college is certainly that outlet. You get to mix, you get to see people in very different lights. I mentioned a moment ago the social, the personal development, the perspectives you get of people with different backgrounds, and hopefully then the diversity of thought, various other elements that come into your psyche that, to be quite honest, aside from the third level education in any university, be it in ATU with Michael Murphy or DCU with Niall Moyna, obviously the academics that you're getting, or just the exposure in that regard in terms of upskilling yourself, education wise, think from a number of different angles, and hopefully, as I said a moment ago, it doesn't erode or doesn't continue to, there's a massive amount of pressure, but at the same time I reflect, out of a number of years, I reflect on my time, Sunday, Wednesday was music to my ears. Fortunately lads get injured, and that's the downside of it too, but Sunday, Wednesday, or at the time it was actually Friday, Saturday, a Sigerson weekend. And then the following weekend, you were playing National Football League. So, look, not ideal. And if you were designing it from scratch, would you do it that way? No, probably not. But at the same time, I think there's massive upsides, as you mentioned there, and upshots to it all if the balance is struck. And I appreciate that's a big if at times.
Sorry, go on. I know you've done that, the Masters in Behavioural Psychology, Jonny, which is fascinating as well. And it strikes me when you're talking about coming up against lads later in the year for your county that you would have played with at Sigerson level. Does it have an impact at all on performance? Like when you're playing against someone you know so well, if you're up against a forward that you're friends with and you socialise with, as you say, throughout the year at college level, or is it just a case of at intercounty level you have to be a robot?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, coming up against lads, seeing them as a normal, as we all should, as a normal person, as a human, etc., what they like, what they don't like, what their tendencies are, what their fears, what their motivations are. Obviously, when you're playing into county and you don't know guys as such, you just take them on face value. You watch them and you do your analysis, and they kick and they run and they catch and they jump, etc. But obviously, that's only 10% of the actual picture. So getting to know lads in different lights is definitely very helpful. Albeit I probably wouldn't personally have come up against too many forwards. It would have been the likes of Rob Henley and Michael Murphy, so Michael at times, but Neil Collins and these guys from Roscommon more so in my circle. So definitely useful to know. It probably just gives you a greater appreciation, if I'm being honest about it, because as I said, you probably don't get the opportunity to socialise or converse beyond just the 60, 70 minutes on a football pitch. So I think it's very useful. Perhaps very useful to guys from a few different perspectives, and albeit at the time, personally anyway, probably didn't take full stock of it, but certainly now looking back, you're like massive opportunity to stay in contact with everyone from David Kelly and Sligo to Carl Craig and in Connacht doing fantastic work. And I guess from a networking, from a professional point of view as well, years later, as it should be, you'll fall back on these relationships beyond just the medals or the Sigerson Cup wins that you had, albeit as important as they are at the time.
One thing I wanted to bring up there, Paddy I think has spoken as well about being dropped from the team and using that as motivation and watching the team be successful. With Conor McKenna on last week, and he was saying he was at a game in Croker when he could have been playing, and he felt a little bit sick when Tyrone were 5-1 up against, just that he will be missing out on it. I think sometimes we just assume that the Dublin success story is relatively straightforward, but actually as individuals you all had to nurse your own motivations at different stages along the way. Were you always able to refer back to the first bit when you weren't in the team to keep you going at the absolute peak, or how did you top up the levels of desire and motivation to keep going?
Yeah, I think certainly for me, and look, you're right, everyone has their own journey, whether it's Kieran Kilkenny that comes straight onto the team and plays and has been playing ever since, or whether it's, Brian Fenton that doesn't play, minor, and all of a sudden it takes a couple of years. Everyone has their own journey. Myself, no different. I did play, albeit on the All-Ireland winning team 2010, captain of that team, and thought it would be just a natural kind of next step, and didn't happen to me for another couple of years. Eventually got an opportunity in their path then, 2012, just to be on the squad. Yeah, I think certainly for me, a big motivator was it took a couple of years to get there, and would have endeavoured and been as disciplined as possible in terms of training and so on at that time, just to get an opportunity, just to get onto a possible squad, which is 30 odd players, never mind a match day, or never mind a 15, or never mind as it transpired for me to be captain of the team. So certainly at times very useful to me, Ger. I think then as my career progressed, I kind of lost that bit of that bit of sense of, because I was there and I was firmly there 3 or 4 years into it. So I was more trying to find those little, I guess, diverse lateral insights that might have been there. And I know we've talked before and around just gleaning insights from different sports, different organisations, different people across the board. And that was probably then more, as the second half of my career took off, the opportunity then just to keep, as I am now, remain curious to know that I know very, very little. So what's out there and the exciting opportunity that's there, just to, as I said, upskill and glean, and maybe, as it was for me for the last number of years, try and influence and lead that group as best as possible.
When you're trying to deal with and process disappointments like that, Jonny, like not getting into a squad, I think I've heard you speaking before about that semi-final defeat to Donegal as well, and how you were out that night and talking about how you felt your own preparation maybe wasn't as good as it could have been, and blaming yourself for some Donegal goals. Is that an important part of being an elite athlete? You almost have to, even if you don't feel like you were at fault, you almost have to take some level of responsibility to keep your ego in check, and maybe, I guess, give yourself something to come back the following year and have that as motivation.
Yeah, I think so, Shane. I mean, like for me, it's trying to, and we're all, as I said, have our own journeys. Certainly at the start of my career, 11 or 12 years ago, like the limited self-awareness, the limited, I guess, in some regards, ability to be able to be humble and be very honest with myself, never mind be honest with teammates and so on. So I think only from a personal perspective, you build up that sort of I guess, awareness of self, and that comes through, doing education. GPA been very, very good over the years. I've gone through some different diplomas in executive leadership and masters in organizational behavior and psychology and that type of thing. So for me, kind of that bit of self-awareness is important to be able to, I guess, honestly reflect upon yourself, but then also when you have the opportunity to talk to coaches or managers or even colleagues and your peers and teammates, that you actually have the ability to bring the pertinent and the right information to the table, as opposed to maybe when you're 20, 21, etc., maybe not as mature, you're not as developed, maybe don't as much perspective, perhaps experience, obviously, at the time as well. So I think that self-awareness is probably the key bit as I reflect upon the question that you asked.
Jonny, you did a round of media yesterday. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the papers, if you've been sent the clippings yet, but there's a lot of focus on just your brutal honesty about your recovery from the horrific attack you suffered. And I just wondered, is it something that you're comfortable talking about now? Is it something that you're never going to be comfortable talking about? Because I hadn't, obviously we'd read some stuff before about it, but I hadn't really heard you talk about it.
It's a funny one for me, Ger, a little bit like as a question is asked now, I'll be as honest as possible in answering the question, but probably wouldn't be going out of my way maybe to share in lots of ways. Very happy to help. And even only this morning, if I'm being honest, somebody got in contact with me to say they'd been through a similar situation and how did I deal with it, basically, and looking for a bit of help. And for me, that's just magic. That's gold dust. If I can help somebody in any situation beyond just performance and sports, and day to day I'm involved in organizations and working with leadership teams and high potentials and so on. So like, to be brutally honest about being crude, I know it's already part of more, like it's 11 or 12 stab wounds to your head. I mean, and some of them are millimeters, a couple on the eyelid, a couple on the ears, many on the back of my neck. Like, it should have been like, there's no doubt in my mind, it should have been curtains for me, and that's not curtains from a football career. Like, it was very, very close. So, and Shane mentioned earlier on that the big thing for me was that Donegal performance and my own preparation for that performance, I guess, as it transpired, put me in that situation. And that was kind of a massive development and learning for me, to just be as prepared as possible, and probably endeavoured, I don't know if I ever got there with my former teammates, but endeavoured to earn their respect in terms of my preparation as well as my on-field performances. So look, I'm very happy to talk about it, but at the same time, it's obviously it's a touchy enough subject that needs to be unpacked and maybe spoken about in certain ways. But as I said, that person that got in touch with me, like, that makes the world of difference to me, to be able to possibly support somebody that's maybe going through a difficult challenge or journey that I might have been through, and that resonates with them.
Yeah, I've no doubt you won the respect of your teammates. Famously, Berno called you a process ninja, so that definitely happened. I think, like, when you talked about suffering fear from it afterwards, I think it's a universal response that many people have to trauma. And to be honest, I feel like showing that publicly is a vulnerability that we all need to show more of, that we all need to talk about these things, because otherwise we kind of skirt around what it means to be a human being and don't really fulfill our full potential.
Yeah, and it's something that resonates in my professional environment. As I mentioned a moment ago, I get to work with leaders and senior leadership teams, and we talk a lot about connecting with your people, connecting with your teams, showing care and demonstrating that, but also, to your point, of being vulnerable and being able to actually be yourself and be authentic and be you. We all have stories and all have pasts and all have, I guess, ways in which we were brought up, or different experiences, and sharing them. I just have one very, very small snippet. Equally, if we were in a different medium, a different conversation today, we could go around the table and we could unpack various things, and profound sort of experiences, I think, are certainly worth sharing. Obviously, there's a time and place to do it, and there's that moment, etc., to do it. But I think you're right, and probably we do a lot of, again, from professional work, a lot of kind of collaboration and knowledge sharing with the Southern Hemisphere colleagues and so on that are down there. They're really, really good, in particular at sort of, just being open. Not that the Irish people aren't open, but being more open and more open to, whatever I have, I'm bringing it forward, and that's the best of me. I know it's not perfect. I'm not perfect, certainly, but bringing that forward and being, I guess, honest in that regard can only be more powerful. I think the Irish way and the Irish sort of human as such is we're certainly getting there, but I think we have a bit of work to do, and that's sort of what makes my job every day fascinating, and trying to help and support people in terms of their performance potential, that being one powerful element to it.
I suppose that's why I actually brought it up, and I appreciate, it is a very delicate subject, but the decision to go public and to talk about it, that's kind of, it's in the papers today, and people can read more details on it. But I do think that shows, a care beyond yourself, and it can't have been an easy decision to talk about.
No. But like, you can't bury things away, or certainly that was my perspective. Like, in some ways, albeit a Z-lister, when you're playing for the Dublin football team, you're sort of public in lots of ways. And I just felt, for a number of reasons, it's important to get it out there, but obviously to own, I firmly feel accountable for putting myself and putting my family to a lesser extent in kind of awkward situations during that particular time. So I felt ownership and accountable to the front up in lots of ways, be honest and be open. Everyone has a couple of drinks on a Friday and Saturday. It wasn't ideal for me that night. It was an unfortunate event, but at the same time, it was an incredible learning. Wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but at the same time, for me, and I spoke about this before, around my ego and other elements just not being right, not being aligned, and not being, where they needed to be, because I love supporting people and teams and performance. And if you, as a leader, which, as I said, I was lucky enough to be for the Dublin team for a number of years, if you're not there, and if you're not accountable, if you're not honest, and you're not presenting yourself in the moment, in the situation, and you're burying some things, albeit some of those things might be delicate, I just don't see how it fully, you get the potential out of yourself. So yeah, look, I think it's going to be a bit of a journey. I've sort of unpacked it a little bit. Some of it's been public, obviously had conversations at home and whatnot as well, and that's been very, very helpful. But, I still get scared when I'm on my own and it's dark. I'll be very honest. And at times I don't like to be places that are no street lights and that type of thing, and kind of looking over my shoulder. I wouldn't put the earphones in as maybe I used to do. If you're listening to music, I'd be very, very vigilant. That's just one kind of thing that's followed me around the last number of years. But as I said, it's good to own it, and it's good to, and thanks for asking the question, it's good to talk about it too.
Yeah, I think it's really brave to talk about it, and I think that I think we as a country definitely have a journey to go when it comes to being open. We're definitely getting better at it, 100% getting better at it, but and I think these conversations, I hope, are helping. And if there is anybody out there who gets any comfort from it, to know that, because you were an elite athlete, you could absolutely look after yourself, you could absolutely protect yourself, but that you still feel vulnerable when there aren't streetlights or when there's darkness or when you're on your own. And I think that a lot of people are going to identify with that, particularly people who've been through anything on the scale of things that you went through.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, look, like, trauma and going through certain instances, they're certainly not pretty, and there's lots of learnings, but upon reflection, and that's the important thing, like, time does pass. Like, for me, the sunlight, the sunlight comes down on my Dublin football career, but every morning, like this morning, the sunlight comes up and there's a new, and people speaking, people being open. As you said, I think there's a bit of ways to go for us as a kind of a nation, but at the same time, I think it's definitely turning, and there's definitely lots more opportunity for people to reach out, and invariably there always is somebody's ears that are there that you can rely upon, albeit you mightn't think it at the time.
Jonny, you've been really good with your time, and I know you've got to go, but I do have one final question. How long is it going to be before we see you on a sideline coaching? Because it sounds like you got a lot of knowledge to impart.
I don't know. I'm still massively curious. The retirement thing doesn't sit well. Massively curious. I'm going to continue to pull a couple of threads around, just trying to stay open and connect with as many different people. I don't know. Look, I don't know if I'll be even any good as a coach or beyond that. But as I said, very interested to help learn, and also help translate people's performance potential. I don't know what context that might be. Maybe it's business, maybe it's not. But wouldn't rule out anything. But at the same time, I know I have a massive journey of knowledge and understanding to gain in the next couple of years too. Well, enjoy the retirement wherever it takes you, Jonny. Great to talk to you again. Thanks a million. Thanks, Ger. Thanks, Shane. It's Jonny Cooper there, who's of course helping us to promote the fact that it's Sigerson week